The grand chamber of the Galactic Council floated in the emptiness of space, a massive structure of crystal and metal that had witnessed 35 centuries of careful peace. Inside its largest hall, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone before the assembled representatives of 4 alien civilizations. Her simple gray suit contrasted sharply with the elaborate form surrounding her. The Krell High Coordinator rose first, its 3 eyes blinking in sequence as telepathic waves filled the room. It spoke aloud for the humans' benefit, its voice like grinding stones. "Human Ambassador, we have tolerated your species long enough. The armistice that ended the First Contact War is hereby declared void." Sarah's face remained perfectly still. She had expected this, but hearing the word still sent ice through her veins. The Vrax Collective speaker clicked forward on 6 chitinous legs, its compound eyes reflecting Sarah in 1,000 fractured images. "Your kind has hidden behind borders for too long. The galaxy has evolved. You have not. Submit to Council authority or face the consequences." From the water-filled sphere, the Depth Lord's translator crackled to life. "We have watched you, humans. You have grown soft. Your warriors are gone. Your children play in gardens and know nothing of war. This is good. Submit peacefully and you will be allowed to continue your simple existence under our guidance." The Luminar delegate pulsed with colors that the translation device rendered as speech. "We have studied your military capabilities. Your fleet numbers 3,000 vessels. Our combined forces total 150,000 warships. This is not a war you can win. This is mathematics." Sarah listened to each declaration with the same calm expression. When the last echo faded from the chamber, she took a single step forward. The aliens tensed, unused to human body language but instinctively recognizing a predator's movement. "Is that your final position?" Sarah asked, her voice soft and clear. The Krell High Coordinator's telepathic presence pressed against her mind, trying to read her thoughts, searching for fear. It found something else entirely. Something that made it recoil. "It is decided. You have 1 standard cycle to respond. Use that time to prepare your surrender." Sarah Chen smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was not a scared smile. It was the cold smile of someone who knows a terrible secret. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Thank you for your clarity," she said simply. "It makes things much easier." She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. The aliens watched her go, confused by her response. They had expected begging or threats or at least some display of emotion. The smile had unnerved them, but they pushed the feeling aside. Fear was making her irrational, they assured themselves. As the door sealed behind her, Sarah touched the communication device hidden in her collar. "Execute protocol remembrance," she whispered. "They've made their choice." 3,000 light-years away on a planet that appeared on no Galactic Council maps, an ancient computer system received the signal. It had waited patiently for 35 centuries, maintained by generations of humans who hoped it would never be needed. Now its purpose was clear. The activation sequence began. In orbit around Earth, General Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the orbital command station, watching the feeds from the Nexus. He was an older man with gray hair and scars that spoke of violence long past. When Sarah's message came through, he closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of what was about to begin. "Signal received, sir," his communications officer reported. "Protocol remembrance is active." Marcus opened his eyes and looked at the display showing Earth below, peaceful and blue. "Send the recall to all Colonial Defense Forces. Wake the silent fleet, and someone get me a line to Admiral Volkov." Around him, officers moved with practiced efficiency. There was no panic, no confusion. They had drilled for this scenario thousands of times. Every human in military service knew this day might come. They had prepared for it since childhood. "Sir," a young lieutenant approached nervously. "The civilian channels are reporting the Council's declaration. People are scared." Marcus turned to face her, and she saw something in his expression that she had never seen before. It was not anger or fear. It was certainty. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that they have nothing to fear. Tell them we kept our promise. Tell them we were ready." Across human space, from the densely populated inner worlds to the rough frontier colonies, the message spread. The armistice was over. War had been declared. And with the message came something unexpected that the aliens monitoring human communications could not understand. Relief. 3,500 years was a long time to wait. A long time to prepare. A long time to hope you would never need to use what you had built. But if the time came, humanity was ready. In the deep black between stars where no alien sensors could reach, massive structures began to power up. Ships larger than anything in the known galaxy started their engines for the first time. These were the vessels of the Silent Fleet, built in absolute secrecy over centuries, using technology that humanity had painstakingly developed from studying captured alien systems and then improving upon them with human ingenuity. Admiral Katerina Volkov received Marcus's call in her quarters aboard the flagship Nevermore. She had been asleep but woke instantly when the priority signal chimed. "Tell me," she said simply. "It's time, Katerina." They declared war. Sarah gave them every chance to reconsider. Katerina dressed quickly, her movements efficient and purposeful. "How long do we wait?" "Let them make the first move. Let them attack our border worlds. We need the galaxy to see who broke the peace. They will die, Marcus. The civilians on those worlds, I know." His voice was heavy. "They know too. They volunteered." This was the ugly truth of humanity's preparation. Every border world was populated by volunteers who understood they would be the first targets. They were not helpless victims. They were the bait in a trap 35 centuries in the making. Back on the Nexus station, the alien representatives congratulated themselves on a decision well made. The humans would surrender or be destroyed. Either outcome benefited the Council. They would finally have access to Earth's resources and the valuable Sol system. They would study human biology and learn their secrets. "Did you see the human's face?" the Vrak speaker chittered to the others. She smiled, like a primitive showing teeth. She was clearly terrified and trying to hide it. The Krell High Coordinator was less certain. "I touched her mind briefly. What I felt was not fear." "Then what?" asked the Depth Lord. The Krell's 3 eyes closed in sequence, a gesture of uncertainty. "I am not sure, but I have recommended our fleet advance with caution." "Caution?" The Luminar's colors flashed with amusement. "Against 3,000 primitive vessels? We have already won. The war is over before it begins." But in the depths of space, Sarah Chen sat alone in her ship, heading back toward human territory. She had not eaten. She had not slept. She simply stared out at the stars and thought about what was coming. Her grandfather had fought in the First Contact War. He had told her stories that never made it into the history books. Stories about what humans had done when pushed to the edge. Stories about the horrors that made both sides agree to stop. "Forgive us," she whispered to the stars. "We tried to stay peaceful. We really did try." Behind her, the Council Nexus grew smaller in the distance. Ahead, her homeworld waited. And between them, the galaxy was about to learn an old lesson. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never assume silence means surrender. And never ever make humanity choose between peace and survival. They always choose survival. And they are very, very good at it. Commander Zexthal of the Krell 4th Fleet reviewed the intelligence reports on human civilization with growing satisfaction. The data was clear and comforting. Humanity controlled exactly 47 star systems, all clustered within 500 light-years of their homeworld. Their fleet consisted of 3,000 registered vessels, most over 2 centuries old. Their population was estimated at 90 billion, spread across their various colonies. "They are a small civilization," Zexthal reported to the War Council. "Contained, manageable. Our forces will overwhelm them in a matter of weeks." What Zexthal did not know, what none of the Council species knew, was that every number in that report was a lie. Not a lie that humans had told, but a lie that the aliens had told themselves by seeing only what they wanted to see. The truth was being discussed in a very different meeting, deep beneath the surface of a moon called Sanctuary 7, located in a system so far from Council space that it would take their fastest ships 3 years to reach it. General Marcus Webb stood before a holographic display that showed the real extent of human civilization. Red dots marked colonies. There were thousands of them. Blue lines showed trade routes connecting systems across a volume of space that dwarfed the entire Galactic Council's territory. Green markers indicated military installations, and there were so many that they blurred together in clusters. "This is what they don't know," Marcus said to the assembled officers. "This is what 35 centuries of peace bought us. Time, space, and distance from their watching eyes." Admiral Katerina Volkov studied the display with the eye of a strategist. When we agreed to the armistice, we promised to stay within our borders. We kept that promise. We just never defined what our borders were. It was technically true. The armistice had specified that humanity would remain in the agreed-upon territory for the duration of the peace. The Council had assumed this meant the 47 systems humanity occupied at the time. They had never asked humanity to confirm this. Humans had never volunteered the information, and while the Council watched humanity's core worlds, human colony ships had been spreading in the opposite direction, into the deep dark where Council sensors did not reach. The first ships had left Sol only 50 years after the armistice was signed. They were generation ships moving slowly, quietly, without fanfare. They carried with them everything humanity had learned from the war. They carried seeds and genetic samples and frozen embryos. Most importantly, they carried a mission: survive at all costs. Over 3,000 years these colonies had grown. They had developed. They had built their own ships and sent out their own colonists. And because they were so far from the Council's watching eyes, they had built something else too: the Silent Fleet. Marcus gestured, and the display changed, now showing ship profiles. Massive dreadnoughts that made the largest Council vessels look like toys. Carriers that could deploy thousands of fighter craft. Weapons platforms equipped with technology that the Council had never imagined possible. "The Council thinks we have 3,000 ships," said Admiral Chen, Sarah's older brother and commander of the 3rd Colonial Fleet. "The actual number is closer to 170,000, and unlike their fleet, all of ours are new." A young officer raised her hand hesitantly. "Sir, I don't understand. If we had this much power, why did we stay hidden? Why did we let the Council think they were superior?" Marcus smiled sadly. "Because our grandparents learned a terrible lesson during the First Contact War. They learned what humans become when we embrace violence fully. They learned that we are very good at war. Too good, it frightened them. So they chose peace, and they taught us to value it above almost everything else." He pulled up another display, this one showing casualty figures from the First Contact War. The numbers were staggering. Billions dead on both sides, entire planets rendered uninhabitable, war crimes that both sides had agreed to never speak of again. "We stayed hidden because we hoped we would never be needed," Marcus continued. "We built all of this as insurance, as preparation, but we prayed it would gather dust. The Council just told us that our prayers were not answered." Far away, on Earth itself, Dr. Sarah Martinez worked in a laboratory buried under 3 miles of solid rock. Her specialty was xenobiology, the study of alien life. For 35 centuries, humanity had been studying their former enemies, studying their strengths, studying their weaknesses, and developing ways to exploit both. "The Krell are telepathic," she explained to her research team. "They use psychic networks to communicate and coordinate their fleets. This is their greatest strength, but it is also a vulnerability. A properly designed neural feedback pulse can turn their own telepathy into a weapon against them." She pulled up a simulation showing what happened when a Krell fleet encountered such a pulse. The psychic backlash spread through their telepathic network like a virus, incapacitating ships across entire battle groups. The Vraks have a hive mentality. Kill the queen nodes and the workers become confused and uncoordinated. The Depth Lords require high-pressure aquatic environments. Breach their hulls and they die in seconds. The Luminar communicate through light. Blind them and they cannot function. Another scientist frowned. "This seems cruel. Are we really going to use all of this?" Dr. Martinez turned to face her colleague. Her expression was hard. "They declared war. They chose this. We are going to survive. If that seems cruel, then they should have chosen peace." This was the other thing that the Council had not understood about humanity. Humans could be incredibly kind, generous, and peaceful. They could also be absolutely ruthless when survival was at stake. The switch between these two states was not gradual. It was instant and total. Back on Sanctuary 7, Marcus received a communication from the border worlds. "Sir, Council fleets are massing near the Tau Ceti system. We estimate they will attack within 72 hours. "Good," Marcus said quietly. "Commander Tanaka, you have your orders. Make them remember why their ancestors agreed to peace." Commander Yuki Tanaka was young for a starship captain, only 32 years old, but she came from a family of warriors stretching back countless generations. Her ship, the Remembrance, was officially a destroyer from the old fleet. It was 300 years old and scheduled for decommissioning. Unofficially, it had been retrofitted with weapon systems that had not existed 3 weeks ago. Yuki sat in her captain's chair and looked at her crew. 30 men and women, all volunteers, all knowing that this mission was one way. When they come, she told them, we show them the price of breaking faith. We show them that humans keep promises. And we promised that if peace ended, we would make them regret it. The crew nodded. Not one of them looked scared. They looked determined, focused, ready. In the council territories, celebrations had begun. The Krell broadcast their intentions across their empire. They would humble the humans. They would bring them into the galactic fold properly. They would show these primitive creatures what true power looked like. The Vrax queens laid millions of eggs preparing warrior drones for the occupation forces. They expected humanity to surrender quickly, but they prepared for potential resistance. They thought they were being cautious. The Depth Lords practiced their invasion formations in the deep oceans of their homeworld. They sang songs of victory in their subsonic language. They imagined the rich oceans of human worlds coming under their control. The Luminar calculated probabilities. Every simulation showed the same result. Overwhelming council victory. The math was simple. More ships, more resources, more territory equals victory. The Luminar trusted mathematics above all else. They did not account for variables they did not know existed. In the darkness between stars, the silent fleet waited. 170,000 ships, their crews ready, their weapons charged, their engines humming with barely contained power. They had trained their entire lives for this. Their parents had trained for this. Their grandparents had trained for this. 3,500 years of preparation was about to be tested. And on a small observation station on the edge of Tau Ceti space, Commander Tanaka watched the sensors as the Krell fleet jumped into the system. 40,000 ships, the largest battle group ever assembled by the Council. They came in formation, precise and confident. Yuki activated the communication system. This is Commander Yuki Tanaka of the Terran vessel Remembrance. You have entered human territory with hostile intent. This is your last chance to withdraw. The Krell Admiral's response came quickly. Single human ship, you are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance is futile. Yuki looked at her weapons officer. Target their flagship. Full power. But Captain, there are 40,000 of them. We cannot possibly, we are not here to win, Yuki said quietly. We are here to send a message. Fire when ready. The weapons officer's hands moved across the console. Firing. The Remembrance had been old and obsolete, but the weapons now installed in its hull were anything but. They had been designed by the best minds humanity had produced over 35 centuries. They represented the cutting edge of human warfare technology, and they were about to introduce the Krell to a very old human saying, never bring a knife to a gunfight. The first shot from the Remembrance crossed the distance between the human destroyer and the Krell flagship in less than a second. It was not a laser. It was not a missile. It was a gravitational pulse, a weapon that twisted space itself into a crushing fist. The flagship, a massive dreadnought called Pride of Krell, simply crumpled. 3 miles of advanced alien engineering compressed into a sphere barely 50 feet across. 15,000 Krell died instantly, their telepathic death screams echoing across the psychic network that connected the entire fleet. The Krell Admiral, aboard a secondary command ship, felt those deaths like physical blows. All ships return fire. Destroy that vessel immediately. 40,000 ships turned their weapons on the Remembrance. The space around the small human destroyer lit up with energy beams, missiles, and plasma bolts. For a moment it seemed like the tiny ship would be vaporized instantly, but the Remembrance had shields that operated on principles the Krell did not understand. The incoming fire bent around it, redirected by gravity wells that the human ship generated and controlled with impossible precision. Most of the shots missed entirely. Those that connected were absorbed by armor that had been designed to withstand pressures found in the core of a star. Their shields are holding, the Krell tactical officer reported, confusion clear in his mental voice. Our weapons are not penetrating. Then use more ships. Concentrate fire. Nothing can withstand the combined firepower of an entire fleet. But Commander Tanaka was not waiting to be destroyed. Activate the nanite payload, she ordered. Target Group Alpha. From the Remembrance, invisible clouds of microscopic machines spread outward. They moved through space like schools of fish. billions of tiny robots, each smaller than a grain of sand. When they reached the nearest Krell vessels, they attached to the hulls and began to eat. The Krell used organic components in their ship construction, grown and shaped through biological processes. The nanites consumed these organic materials with terrifying efficiency. Within minutes, entire ships were coming apart, their hulls dissolving into clouds of debris. The Krell inside did not die quickly. They suffocated slowly as their ships failed around them, their telepathic terror adding to the chaos spreading through the fleet. "What is happening?" the Krell admiral demanded. "Why are our ships failing?" No one had an answer. The sensors showed nothing. The attacks were invisible. Ship after ship went dark, their hulls compromised, their systems failing. The precise formation of the Krell fleet dissolved into confusion as captains tried to maneuver away from whatever was killing them. Commander Tanaka watched the chaos with no satisfaction, only determination. Load kinetic rounds. Target the carrier groups. The Remembrance had one more weapon to demonstrate. From its forward cannons, it fired solid projectiles. They were simple pieces of metal shaped like spears, each one weighing several tons. But they moved at 90% of light speed. At that velocity, mass became a devastating weapon. The kinetic rounds punched through Krell ships like they were made of paper. Each impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear explosion. Ships did not just die. They vaporized, becoming expanding clouds of superheated gas. The Krell admiral watched in horror as his fleet came apart. In less than 10 minutes, he had lost over 3,000 ships. 3,000 ships destroyed by a single human vessel that their intelligence had classified as obsolete. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships jump to safety. Retreat now." But the Remembrance was not finished. As the Krell ships began to activate their jump drives, Yuki gave one final order. "Activate the gravity well. Full power." The space around the battlefield suddenly became impossible to leave. The Remembrance generated a gravitational field so intense that it prevented faster-than-light travel. The Krell ships that tried to jump found their drives failing, their engines overloading. Some ships exploded as their jump drives tore themselves apart. "We cannot escape," the tactical officer reported. "They have trapped us here." The Krell admiral felt something he had never experienced before in his 3 centuries of life. True fear. "Signal to all ships. Concentrate all fire on that single vessel. Everything we have. Kill it now." The remaining 37,000 Krell ships turned as one and unleashed everything they had. The combined firepower of an entire fleet, focused on a single point. The Remembrance's shields held for almost a full minute, an impossible achievement that would have seemed like magic to any engineer who understood the physics involved. But even human engineering had limits. The shields failed. The armor, tough as it was, began to melt under the sustained barrage. The hull breached in a dozen places. Commander Tanaka felt the ship dying around her. Emergency systems were screaming. Half her crew was already dead. The artificial gravity failed and she found herself floating in her command chair. "Communications," she said calmly. "Are we still broadcasting?" "Yes, Captain. The transmitter is still functional." "Good." Yuki activated the fleet-wide channel. She knew the Krell were listening. She knew humans across the galaxy were listening. She knew history was listening. "This is Commander Yuki Tanaka of the destroyer Remembrance. To the Krell fleet, you killed one obsolete ship and lost 4,000 vessels in exchange. This is the price of war with humanity. This is what we can do with our old equipment. Imagine what our new fleet will do to you." She paused, looking at her remaining crew. They floated in the ruined bridge, wounded and dying, but none of them looked afraid. They looked proud. To all humans, they made their choice. Now we make ours. Remember what we fight for. Remember why we build weapons we hope never to use. And remember that peace is always better than victory. The final volley from the Krell fleet tore the Remembrance apart. The ship exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from the edge of the system. Commander Tanaka and her crew died instantly, but their message had been sent. And the Krell fleet, battered and confused, was left floating in space trying to understand what had just happened. "Admiral," the communication officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission. It's from human space. They are speaking to us." "Put it through." The voice that came across the channel was calm and measured. It belonged to General Marcus Webb. "Krell fleet, this is Terran Command. You have just destroyed one of our ships and murdered 30 humans. This is an act of war. It is also a mistake you will not survive to regret. The Remembrance was 300 years old. It was scheduled for decommissioning. It was not a frontline vessel. It was not even a reserve vessel. It was a museum piece, and it destroyed 4,000 of your ships. The Krell admiral felt his blood run cold. You lie. This is psychological warfare. Believe what you want, Marcus continued. But you should know that we have been monitoring your invasion fleet. We know exactly where you are. We know your formation. We know your capabilities. And we are sending something much more current to meet you. You have approximately 6 hours before our real fleet arrives. I suggest you use that time to make peace with whatever gods you believe in. The channel closed. The Krell fleet hung in space, trapped by the gravity well that the Remembrance had generated. The field would take hours to dissipate. They had no choice but to wait. Admiral, the tactical officer said quietly, if what they say is true, if that ship was truly obsolete and their new vessels are even more powerful, then we have made a terrible mistake. The Admiral finished. Contact the Nexus, tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them everything. But reinforcements would take days to arrive, and the humans had promised to be there in 6 hours. The Krell began to prepare. They formed defensive positions. They ran diagnostics on all systems. They did everything they could to ready themselves for battle. But among the crews of 37,000 ships, a new feeling was spreading. It was the same feeling their admiral had felt, fear. The humans were coming. And the Krell were beginning to understand that they had not been fighting a war 3,500 years ago. They had been surviving an extermination. The Armistice had not been a victory. It had been mercy, and they had just thrown that mercy away. In the darkness beyond the Tau Ceti system, Admiral Katerina Volkov stood on the bridge of the Nevermore, watching the countdown timer. Beside her, 200 capital ships of the Silent Fleet waited. These were not museum pieces. These were ships that had never seen battle, built with technology that represented the best of human engineering. Their crews were fresh, well-trained, and determined. 5 hours and 57 minutes until we jump, the navigation officer reported. Katerina looked at the display showing the Krell fleet position. 37,000 ships. Under normal circumstances, 200 vessels would not stand a chance against those numbers. But circumstances were not normal. The Krell had just learned what one obsolete human ship could do. They were about to learn what a modern human fleet could accomplish. Prepare all weapon systems, she ordered. When we jump in, I want to hit them before they can react. No mercy, no hesitation. They wanted war. We will give them war. Around her, officers moved with quiet efficiency. There was no battle rage, no bloodlust. There was only cold, professional determination. This was what humanity had become during the long peace. Not warriors who loved war, but protectors who understood that sometimes violence was necessary. And when it was necessary, the Vrax Collective's invasion of New Harvest began exactly as their war planners had predicted. The agricultural world was lightly defended, its population consisting mostly of farmers and terraformers. The Vrax brought a modest force of 5,000 ships, more than enough to overwhelm what they expected to be minimal resistance. Queen Mind X Sathar watched through the eyes of her drones as they descended toward the planet's surface. The world was beautiful, covered in vast fields of golden grain and orchards heavy with fruit. Scattered settlements dotted the landscape. Simple structures that housed the human population. It looked peaceful. Easy. Begin landing operations, Ixathar commanded through the Hive network. Secure the population centers. Minimal casualties. We want these humans alive to work the fields under proper supervision. The first wave of Vrax warriors touched down near the largest settlement, a town called Harvest Home. The insectoid soldiers moved with coordinated efficiency, surrounding the buildings, prepared for potential resistance. Human figures emerged from the structures, hands raised in apparent surrender. This is easier than expected, a warrior drone reported. The humans are complying. That was when the fields exploded. The irrigation systems that the Vrax had seen from orbit were not irrigation systems at all. They were weapons. Concealed beneath the peaceful farmland were defense grids that had been installed when the colony was founded. Plasma cannons erupted from hidden bunkers. Missile batteries rose from silos disguised as grain storage. Energy shields snapped into place over the settlements. The first wave of Vrax warriors died in seconds, vaporized by weapons fire they had not seen coming. The landing craft trying to deploy reinforcements found themselves targeted by surface-to-air systems that should not have existed on a farming world. "What is happening?" Xethar demanded. "How does an agricultural colony have military-grade weapons?" The answer came from a human voice broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Colonel James Park, New Harvest Defense Force. You made a critical error in your intelligence. Every human colony is a military installation. Every human farmer is a soldier. We learned this lesson 3,000 years ago. Never build anything that cannot defend itself." Colonel Park was 63 years old. He had been farming wheat on New Harvest for 30 years. Before that, he had served in the Colonial Marines for 20 years. Before that, his parents had farmed and fought. Before that, his grandparents. Every generation of his family had learned to grow food and wage war with equal skill. "All units execute defensive pattern Delta," Park ordered. His tone was calm, professional. This was not his first battle. "Remember your training. Protect the settlements. Make them pay for every meter." The humans of New Harvest moved with military precision because they were military. The Vraks had assumed that frontier colonists would be soft, untrained civilians. They were catastrophically wrong. Every adult on New Harvest had spent years in active military service before being allowed to colonize. The children grew up learning to shoot before they learned to read. This was the reality of human expansion. In the dangerous galaxy, humanity did not send the weak to settle new worlds. They sent the strong. They sent veterans. They sent people who could build a farm in the morning and defend it in the evening. The Vraks fleet in orbit watched in confusion as their ground forces were systematically destroyed. "Deploy more warriors," Cathar ordered. "Overwhelm them with numbers." But numbers were not enough. The humans had prepared the entire planet as a battlefield. Every hill had firing positions. Every valley had kill zones. Every forest concealed troops. The Vraks poured drones onto the surface and watched them die in waves. "This is impossible," Xathar hissed. "They are farmers." "Where did they get military training?" "From being farmers," Colonel Park replied, having intercepted the Vraks' command frequency. "We grow food. We raise families. We build communities. And we defend them. All of it, every day. You think these are separate skills. For humans, they are the same skill. It is called survival." After 6 hours of brutal ground combat, the Vraks had lost half their invasion force and had not secured a single settlement. Xethar made the decision to withdraw and bombard the planet from orbit. "If we cannot take it, we will destroy it. Prepare orbital strikes." The orbital bombardment never came. As the Vraks fleet prepared to fire on the planet, sensors detected incoming ships. Lots of ships. The human reinforcement fleet had arrived. And they were not interested in negotiations. Across the galaxy, in the crystalline depths of Luminar space, Admiral Katerina Volkov was teaching the light-based aliens a different lesson. The Luminar had always believed their greatest strength was their communication system. They spoke through light, transmitting data and orders at the speed of photons. It made their coordination perfect. Their responses instantaneous. Admiral Volkov had spent 20 years studying Luminar communications. She understood their language better than most Luminar understood it themselves, and she knew how to lie in it. "Transmit false orders on their command frequencies," she ordered. "Make it look like it is coming from their fleet commander. Tell Group Alpha to withdraw to defensive positions. Tell Group Beta that Alpha has been destroyed and they need to retreat. Tell Group Gamma that reinforcements are coming from behind them." The Luminar fleet dissolved into chaos. Ships moved in conflicting directions, responding to orders that seemed legitimate but contradicted each other. By the time they realized they were being deceived, the human fleet was among them, and close-range combat did not favor the Luminar's long-distance coordination advantage. The battle was brutal and short. The Luminar lost 3 entire fleets before their High Council sued for peace. The humans accepted, but their terms were harsh. Luminar space was now restricted. They would not expand. They would not rebuild their military. They would be watched. But the worst fate befell the Depth Lords. The aquatic species had believed their mastery of ocean warfare was unmatched. They attacked Poseidon, a human ocean world, expecting an easy victory. They found something else entirely. The Marianas Division was humanity's most specialized military unit. They were humans who had been bioengineered to survive in the deepest oceans. Their bodies could withstand crushing pressures that would kill normal humans instantly. Their eyes could see in absolute darkness. Their lungs could extract oxygen from water. They were designed for one purpose: to fight in environments where normal humans could not survive. When the Depth Lords attacked Poseidon, they expected to face humans in submersibles and pressure suits. Instead, they met enemies who could swim faster, dive deeper, and see better in the dark than they could. The Marianas Division fought with weapons designed for underwater combat. Cavitation torpedoes that created bubbles of vacuum that imploded with devastating force. Sonic weapons that used the ocean itself as a medium to destroy. Chemical agents that were harmless to humans but lethal to Depth Lord biology. The battle lasted 3 days. It was fought in the deepest trenches of Poseidon's oceans, in pressures that would crush diamonds and darkness that swallowed all light. When it was over, the Depth Lords had lost their entire invasion fleet. Not a single ship escaped. The surviving Depth Lords who made it back to their homeworld brought stories that seemed impossible. Stories of humans who moved through the water like they were born to it. Stories of enemies who fought in the crushing deep with no fear. Stories of warriors who smiled in the darkness before they killed. Back in Tau Ceti, Admiral Volkov's fleet had finished with the Krell. The battle had been methodical and efficient. 200 human ships had destroyed 37,000 Krell vessels in less than 8 hours. The technology gap was so vast that it had not been a battle. It had been an execution. The few Krell ships that managed to escape carried a message back to their homeworld. A message that spread through the entire Krell collective. A message that their ancestors had known but they had forgotten. Do not fight humans. Ever. Under any circumstances. Peace is not weakness. Peace is mercy. And when humans show mercy, accept it gratefully. General Marcus Webb received the battle reports from all fronts. New harvest had held. The Vracs were in full retreat. The Luminar had surrendered. The Depth Lords were shattered. The Krell were broken. In less than 2 weeks, the combined forces of the Galactic Council had been defeated. Casualty report? Marcus asked quietly. Minimal, sir. New Harvest lost 400 civilians. Various other engagements cost us approximately 3,000 personnel total. Enemy casualties are estimated in the millions. Marcus closed his eyes. 3,000 humans dead, millions of aliens dead. This was why humanity had chosen peace. This was why they had hidden their strength. Because when humans fought, the universe bled. Send a message to all Council territories, Marcus ordered. Tell them we are prepared to discuss terms. But make it clear, the terms will be ours, not theirs. Across the galaxy, the Council species that had been so confident 2 weeks ago now faced the reality of their situ. 6 months after the Council's declaration of war, Ambassador Sarah Chen walked alone across the landing pad of the Nexus station. The massive structure looked different now. Scorch marks from human weapons scarred its crystalline surface. Entire sections remained dark where power systems had been destroyed during the brief battle that had taken place here 3 weeks ago. The battle had not been necessary. The station had been abandoned by its alien staff, but when human ships arrived to secure it, automated defense systems had activated. Those systems were now silent, along with everything else that had tried to stop humanity's advance. Sarah entered the council chambers and found them almost empty. Where once hundreds of representatives from dozens of species had gathered, now only 4 figures waited. The High Coordinator of the Krell, the Queen Mind of the Vracs, a representative of the Luminar, a single Depth Lord in a mobile water tank. They were all that remained of the Council's leadership. They looked at Sarah with expressions she had never seen before from them: fear, defeat, and something else, understanding. You came, the Krell High Coordinator said. Its telepathic presence was subdued, carefully neutral. We expected you to simply dictate terms through communications. I came because this conversation deserves to happen face to face, Sarah replied. She sat down at the human delegation seat, the same seat she had occupied 6 months ago when they had declared war. I came because you need to understand what happened and why. The Vracs Queen Mind clicked forward. We understand perfectly. We attacked you, we lost. You were stronger. This is the way of the universe. No, Sarah said firmly. That is not the lesson here. You did not lose because we were stronger. You lost because you did not understand what strength means. She activated a holographic display. It showed footage from the First Contact War, 3,500 years ago. The images were horrific. Planets burning. Ships torn apart. Billions dying. War crimes committed by both sides. This is what happened when our two civilizations met, Sarah said. This is what war between spacefaring species looks like when neither side will surrender. Total annihilation, complete destruction, the end of everything. The Luminar representative pulsed with colors that translated to confusion. But you won that war. Our records show that humanity was victorious. We were winning, Sarah corrected. Not the same thing. Yes, we were winning. We were destroying your fleets faster than you could build them. We were taking your worlds. We were on the path to complete victory. She paused, and it was destroying us. She changed the display to show internal human records from that era. Psychological reports. Casualty statistics. Reports of soldiers breaking down, unable to continue fighting but forced to anyway. Ethical complaints from commanders who had been ordered to commit atrocities. We discovered something about ourselves during that war, Sarah continued. We discovered that humans are very, very good at violence. We have a capacity for warfare that terrified even ourselves. We could have destroyed you completely. Every world, every ship, every member of every species that opposed us. We had the weapons. We had the will. We had the momentum. Then why did you stop? The Depth Lord asked through its translator. Because we looked at what we were becoming and decided we did not want to be that. We chose to stop. We offered the Armistice not because we needed peace, but because we wanted to prove to ourselves that we were more than just efficient killers. Sarah stood and walked to the center of the chamber. For 3,500 years we have been trying to be better than we were during that war. We built weapons, yes. We prepared for this day, yes. But we hoped it would never come. We hoped that the Armistice would become permanent. We hoped that peace would become the normal state of the galaxy. The Krell High Coordinator's three eyes blinked in sequence. Then we have destroyed something precious. We have ended a peace that both sides valued. You have, Sarah agreed. And now we must build something new. But it will not be the same. It cannot be the same. You have proven that the old system does not work. She pulled up a document on the display. These are humanity's terms. They are not negotiable. You will accept them or we will enforce them. The terms were simple but absolute. The Galactic Council was dissolved immediately. Each species would return to their home systems and establish a border zone of 500 light-years around their territory. No military vessels would be permitted in these border zones. Humanity would patrol the neutral space to ensure compliance. Any species that violated these terms would be considered to have declared war on humanity. And humanity's response would be immediate and total. You are making yourselves the police of the galaxy, the Vrax Queen Mind protested. You are establishing a tyranny. No, Sarah said coldly. We are establishing order. You had your chance to prove that you could coexist peacefully. You chose war instead. This is the consequence of that choice. She walked to each representative in turn, making sure they understood. We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. We do not want to rule over you. We want you to go home and stay there. We want you to rebuild your civilizations. We want you to prosper, but we want you to do it far away from us and far away from each other. And if we refuse, the Luminar asked, then we will do what we did to your fleets, Sarah said simply. We will destroy your military capability completely. We will station forces in your systems. We will occupy your worlds. We would prefer not to, but we will if necessary. The silence that followed was heavy. The alien representatives looked at each other, communicating through their various methods. Finally, the Krell High Coordinator spoke for all of them. We accept your terms. We will withdraw to our home systems. We will comply with your monitoring. We ask only one thing. What? Tell us why you showed mercy 3,000 years ago. Tell us why you did not simply destroy us when you had the chance. We need to understand. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Because my great-great-grandmother fought in that war. She was a ship captain. She destroyed hundreds of Krell vessels. She killed thousands of your people, and when the Armistice was signed, she cried for 3 days straight. Not because she had lost, but because she had won. Because she had become someone who could kill thousands and feel nothing while doing it. She looked at the Krell directly. She spent the rest of her life teaching children that peace was precious. That violence was sometimes necessary but never good. That the ability to destroy does not mean you should destroy. She made me promise when I was young that if I ever had the power to choose between war and peace, I would always choose peace first. I kept that promise for as long as I could. You forced me to break it. The Krell High Coordinator lowered its head in a gesture of respect. We understand now. We will remember this lesson. We will teach our children. We will not forget again. One by one, the alien representatives signed the agreement. The Galactic Council was officially dissolved. The new order was established. The galaxy would be different now. Safer, perhaps. More peaceful, hopefully. But also lonelier. The dream of a united galactic civilization was over. Sarah left the Nexus station and returned to her ship. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. She spent most of it staring out at the stars, thinking about what had been lost and what had been gained. When she finally reached Earth, she went directly to the tomb of the unknown soldier from the First Contact War. It was a simple monument, just a black stone with names carved into it. Thousands of names, millions of names, all the humans who had died in that terrible conflict. She placed a new plaque next to the old one. It read, "They gave us 3,500 years. We did not waste them. We built, we grew, we prepared, and when war came again, we remembered what peace cost. May we never forget again." Above Earth, the silent fleet maintained its orbit. 170,000 ships visible now to anyone who looked up. They were no longer hidden. They were a reminder, a promise, a warning. In his office on Orbital Command Station, General Marcus Webb received reports from across human space. The border zones were being established. Monitoring stations were being built. The former council species were complying with the terms, some reluctantly, some with what seemed like relief. "Sir," a young officer approached. "The news networks want to interview you. They are calling this a great victory." Marcus shook his head. It was not a victory. It was a necessity. We did what we had to do. Nothing more. Nothing less. What should I tell them, sir? Tell them to go home. Tell them to hug their families. Tell them to be grateful we live in a time of peace again, and tell them to pray it lasts longer than the last one. On New Harvest, Colonel James Park returned to his farm. The fields had been damaged during the battle, but they could be repaired. He spent his days planting new crops and his evenings teaching the next generation how to defend them. The children listened carefully, understanding that farming and fighting were not separate skills. In the Vrax Collective, Queen Mind Exathar laid eggs that would become a new generation of drones. But now, along with warrior training, these drones would learn something